You can see it. I can see it. The president's team can see it. Anyone with a reasonable mind can see it. However, those who committed this and those who were involved in it will never admit to seeing it, for one reason and one reason only. For the first time in 4 years, they have now been able to get the feeling from politics that they have been used to getting. For them, it is about a feeling. It's not about governance. It's not about the rule of law. It's not about right or wrong. Those who committed this will never admit it. Now, those they used to commit it, the high school kids, are going to pull this argument out. You have no proof. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But you have no proof. Even though we can see it in the numbers, it's very clear in the numbers, and maybe a judge, maybe a justice will have an attack of conscience and do something about this, but truthfully, I'm not holding my breath. And this is why. People scratch their heads. How can they feel good about winning when they know they cheated? Because we talked about this a couple videos ago. You see, to them, they have the moral imperative. How many movies and TV series have we seen in the last 30, 40 years where the protagonist, the good guy, really does something kind of wrong, but because he has a good reason for doing it, it makes it right? See, they really believe that Hillary had the election stolen from her in 2016 because she really won the popular vote. And of course, because of the climate emergency, we have to do something. So no matter how wrong it was, no matter how big of a violation of law can be proven, you're never going to get these people to say, okay, yeah, this is not right. We should change this. It's just not going to happen. But they have given us a huge piece of intelligence that we can use going forward. What is that? Well, you see, people thought that they were dealing with reasonable folks. Now we know we're not. So we can start to fill in the map accordingly. You see, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Nevada, for sure, have now told us that they have absolutely no respect for the rule of their own laws, that they're willing to subvert their own laws, ignore their own voting laws, to get their way. The reason I include Minnesota in this is because of what happened last summer. But as far as the election goes, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, we've proven, beyond the shadow of a doubt, manipulated their vote, or allowed it to be manipulated. Wisconsin primarily with the help of Chicago, so Illinois, and in today's video we are going to show how Nevada did it as well. Now, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, I have question marks. We may put, oh, by the way, these are North Korean flags. See, because that's how we should treat these people going forward. They've given us the intelligence we needed. And if you're in those states as a conservative, I would recommend leaving as soon as possible. Because once again, the rule of law doesn't apply in those states. They're going to make up their own rules as they go because, once again, they have the moral imperative to. And of course, their moral imperative eventually is going to tell them that they need to get rid of conservatives one way or the other. So if I were you, I would leave and go to one of these states that I have labeled with a giant patriot symbol. Now, some of you might ask, what about these blank states, especially out here on the West Coast? Well, I don't find any evidence that they manipulated their vote or broke their own laws. Do they vote liberal? Sure. But it looks like they did it honestly. Meaning they conducted a vote, they abided by their own laws. I don't agree with their laws, that's why I don't live there, and I wouldn't recommend people living there, but I wouldn't give them a North Korea flag. I wouldn't give them a North Korea flag at all. Because, for better or for worse, it looks like they conducted honest elections. I don't agree with most of the people out here, but the elections seem to be honest. In fact, we used California as a control yesterday for that simple fact, because you can see in the numbers that they did, in fact, conduct an honest election. They're mostly liberals. And you go back to 2004, to 2008, 12, 16. This time, the numbers all line up. Same thing with New Mexico, Colorado, and all these states up east. Virginia as well. These three with question marks remain to be seen. My recommendation would be any of the states that you see with Patriot symbols on them. So, anyway, vote with your money. Vote with your money. Leave. If anyone were asking me, no one is, but if someone were, I would recommend states that conducted honest, free, and fair elections to very seriously consider not doing business with states that we've proven have no respect for the rule of law. Because if they can't adhere to their own laws, why would they adhere to any financial agreement? They could just change the rules in the middle of the game, just like they did this time. And once again, I'm not labeling all liberal states that way. It seems like in New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, they all conducted elections just like they have in the past. And they voted liberal. In fact, today we're going to show that New York is in fact a control state. So, anyway, this is what I would suggest. Now, they are updating numbers. They are updating numbers up, even though they called California within literally a matter of minutes after the polls closed. The numbers are increasing, but the percentages are staying the same. So let's go ahead and show our new information. Let me see if I have the camera correct here so that everything can be seen. All right, here we go. California. And this is from, if you go to my last video, the one that was so popular from yesterday, in the first pinned comment, you can see all of this information. I just have it here on blank slate to make it easier to look at. Now, some on the liberal side listening to this, like, what do you mean a control state, Maki? What are you talking about? Well, when you look back at past elections and the difference in the voting totals from one election to the other, there's a variance that occurs depending on what's going on. And so we went back all the way to 2004 in the 4 previous elections, and you can see in states there's a normal swing. Like, for example, California. Population, approximately 40 million. They're a blue state. They vote pretty much the same way every time. So they have a bit of a variance. So from 2004 to 2008, this was the year that Barack Obama ran, they were up 1 million votes. Now, that's only 2.5% for a state like California, so not a big deal. 12.2 million to 13.2 million. The next election cycle, 2012, they were down 600,000 votes. That just happens on midterms. They voted the same way. 2016, Trump runs. They were up again, 500,000, 1.25%. So there's a variance here. Now, 2020. The allegation from the left is that all of these big numbers that we're showing are just a result of people being energized to vote against Donald Trump. Well, shouldn't we see that in a blue state? Shouldn't we definitely see that in the biggest blue state in the union? If there is this giant push or energy to vote against Donald Trump, we should see a massive increase in the numbers to 2020. What do we see? in California. We don't even see as big of an increase as we saw in 2008 when Barack Obama ran. Only 900,000 more votes, or 2.3%. Now, I think somebody saw my video yesterday and they're updating numbers in California to try to make it look like there was a much bigger turnout than what there really was. But once again, they've already called California, so how can they be updating numbers? However, let's go to control state number 2, New York. Population, approximately 19 million. 2004 to 2020, they went from 19.3 to 19.4. Now, they were kind of a parabola where they went up over 20 million and then back down again. So, roughly a static population, a few more people, about 100,000, not really anything to write home about. And what do we see? 2004 to 2008, up 281,000, 1.5%. The next election, 2012, down 582,000. 2016. Now, they had a woman who was a former senator in New York running, so you'd think they would have been up, right? Nope, down again, 400,000. But look at the numbers. 1.5%, 3.1%, 2.1%. And here's where things are a little strange. In this election, they were down yet again. 819,000 votes. Remember that number, 819,000 votes, because we're going to cover it here again in a minute. 4.3%. So, still, explainable numbers. But why wouldn't liberals in New York be all sorts of excited to get out to vote against Donald Trump? More people voted back in 2008. More people voted back in 2004. And we're not talking about New York City, where the COVID could have anything to do with it. We're talking about the whole state. Now, Michigan. Total ridiculousness. 2004. Population 10 million. Static population 2004 to 2020, roughly. Maybe 50,000 more people. They had, once again, they were a parabola. They had 10 million people, and then they dropped down to 9 million people, 9.5, 9.7, something like that, and then back up to 10. So static numbers. So what do we see in the variance? 2004 to 2008. Okay, this was Barack Obama. So up 118,000, but only 1%. The next year, 2012, down 232,000, 2%. 2016, down again, 1%. Nothing to write home about. But 2020, a red state from the last election, all of a sudden, regardless of us seeing rallies with Trump banners as far as the eye could see, and Biden not even being able to fill a Starbucks, somehow they flip blue and are up 899,000 votes, or 9% of their whole population, even though there was no increase in population. That doesn't strike you as odd? You see, here's the kicker on this. Okay? They were up 899,000 votes, total votes. They only have a population of 10 million. They were up more votes than California, with 4 times the population. With 4 times the population. And California's a blue state. You thought for sure they would have been energized, right? Now, remember our number up here from New York? Down 819,000 votes. Strange correlation right next door in Pennsylvania. You see, once again, they had a very normal variance over the years. 1.5%, 2%, 1.8% from 2004 to 8 to 12 to 16. But strangely, 2020, they were up 6%, 787,000 votes. Right next door to New York, who was down around 800,000 votes. Could New York have exported those votes to try to flip Pennsylvania? Because they had votes, they had blue votes to burn. This might have been what was up there. Illinois sent voters to Michigan and Wisconsin. Out of Chicago, plenty of blue votes to burn there to flip their elections. And New York sent them to Pennsylvania. Makes perfect sense. See, and they lost 100,000 people in population over this 16-year period, but somehow managed to cook up 787,000 more votes out of nowhere in one election cycle. Wisconsin. You see, the smaller the state, the worse it gets. We see this in Wisconsin. 2004, 2.968 million votes. 2008, 2.939. So they're down 0.4%. 2012, they're up 1.2%. 2016, down. Now here's what's really crazy. 2016, they were down 242,000 votes. That makes perfect sense if you know anything about Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a bunch of Christians. Conservative, very conservative Christians. Who was on the ballot in 16? Clinton and Trump. So they stayed home. Both sides stayed home. But in 2020, somehow, some way, there was a 700,000 vote swing. They were up 453,000 votes, or 8%. They were down 242 the previous year. That's the 700,000 vote swing I'm talking about. That represents 12% of their population, allegedly, in what had been a red state. Yeah, tell me another one. We added a new state here, Nevada. Nevada. Population. We only see this. Even the president tweeted about this. Population, approximately, 3 million people in 2004, dropping to 2.89 million in 2020. Now let's look at their votes. They were up every year. 815,000 votes to 946, up 4.3. 2012, up 1.6. 2016, up 1.8. But this year, up 8.5%, or 250,000 people. In this tiny, tiny state with less than 3 million people grand total, they cooked up an extra 250,000 votes, having lost population over this 16-year period. Having lost population. This is fraud. It's absolutely fraud. See, they knew where they needed to cheat, and they cheated. It's just that simple. Now, what does that tell us about them, though? It tells us everything we need to know. It tells you everything you need to know about where to spend your money. Are you a business owner? Go through your list of suppliers. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Nevada. Call them up. Guess what? Sorry. Sucks to be you. Personally, if I was the governor of Michigan, I would recommend to the legislature that they pass some type of a law that anyone vacationing in Florida from any of these states needs to pay a fee of some kind for the extra law enforcement we're going to need to keep an eye on those citizens, because they come from states that are more in line with how North Korea does things than America. That would be just my personal opinion. Because it's not about them voting, and I'll say this again, it's not about them voting liberal. It's about them not adhering to their own laws. It's about them allowing fraud to go on and looking the other way. Because to them, it's just a giant game. To them, it's just a giant game. So, anyway, I will leave it there before I probably say something that'll get me in trouble. But just remember this with your friends, guys. The kids are going to look back at this when they're older and regret it. And it'll probably make them more conservative. And it'll give them something to teach their kids about how people can manipulate you. But understand, they will never feel bad about it. They will never feel bad about it because of the feeling they lost in 2016 and their moral imperative for the climate emergency. See, it's all feelings with them. It's all feelings. So don't waste your breath. Don't waste your breath. Don't waste your time. The only hope right now is that there's a judge or a justice somewhere who's going to have an attack of conscience and perhaps a moral backbone and fix this. But, like I said, don't hold your breath. Like, share, subscribe.